Okay, so I've recently bought a fairly ropey Scared Stiff. Looks okay, but there's just a lot of things wrong. Boards seem to be okay. The only functionality that doesn't seem to work that I've got to thus far is,
oh yeah,
you run the test report, the spider wheel error is not there. When you actually go into the test, basically there's an error. The motor seems to be not spinning. So we're going to diagnose that and see where we go from there. So I'm going to open up the back glass and see how we go. So first off, it appears it's unplugged. I doubt it can be that easy, that it's simply a matter of plugging it back in. But effectively it's a stepper motor, so you've got 4 wires that go to it from the board, and then you've got the actual motor itself. Now, you can jiggle the spider off itself. Let's whack it in and just test it. Let's see. Okay, that's it. We'll try it again. Okay, so that's not spinning either. You can see it's making no noise. So it's either an electrical issue. Let's have a look, put this on voltage. Let's see what we're getting. Grounding one end of these. So from the top, I'm not sure the numbers of the pins, but the top pin and the second from the bottom pin are clearly at 8 or 9 volts each. So the board is receiving voltage. The question is the other pins, is it a mechanical or an electrical issue? So let me have another look at this. So I'm just going to remove this, the actual motor which is on this board. Okay, so with the board out, you can see, with the board and the motor out, you can see it's a pretty basic board. It sits in the back box like this, with the input plugs there and the motor being plugged into this plug here, which is labeled as P2. And as I said, the voltage on pin, basically pin 1 and pin 8, when plugged in with no action on it, but basically not being tested, pin 1 and pin 8 are showing 9 volts. So let's have a look. On the board, it's a pretty basic board, so you just got one single opto which has got the interrupter on it, which is associated with the well, on the spider, at the bottom of the spider there's that interrupter which effectively cuts out on the opto, which triggers the CPU to know where the spider is located to start with, and then goes from there. One standard little transistor up there. So I'm going to just check a couple of things. I'm going to check the resistance of this motor I'm going to check the transistor quickly and just see that we don't have something shorted. So let me start by just unplugging the motor from there. The other thing I noticed is, I don't know if you can see on here some details. I'm not sure if that's focused, but effectively in there you can see it's a 12 volt motor with the resistance stating it's 37.5 ohms. So the 12 volts, and that it says 37 ohms. So just to check whether in fact this motor is damaged at all. In terms of if it's shorted, I'm just going to check the resistance. So I've got my multimeter set onto ohms, and if I go in and using this plug, I should get something in the region of between 35 and 37 ohms resistance. 36 ohms on the one, and 35.7 on the other. So it looks like that's not an issue. Let's check to see what the transistor looks like, to see if that's shorted. Basic test to see whether the central grounded leg has got continuity, but if there's shorted, these will show up. Now, given that this motor doesn't really strain the board very much, so each of the outer legs, nothing inner leg should have continuity, so that seems to be fine. Basic cursory test. So now what I'm going to do is have a look physically inside this motor to see if I can see any damage in there. So I'll just remove those 4 screws holding this in. Right. Okay, so that motor comes out, and you can see the different stepper motors in there. So I'm going to try to pull this shaft out. It seems a bit tight. It's not just flowing. See if I can get this out. There we go. There's all sorts of gunk in here. I don't know if you can see in that motor, there's all sorts of stuff in here. I'm not certain what that is. Looks like little bits of metal which on the central cog. So basically, because this cog is magnetic, I think what's happening is any little bits of metal which is coming from wear and tear has clogged this all up, and you can see in there there's still a whole lot of fine dust, bits of metal. So I'll try to get that out as much as I can. I've got myself a brush. I'm just gonna brush all that magnetic stuff out. It's quite interesting. There's so much of it. All that stuff that's come out. Now, I don't know if this is what's causing the problem, but that's now predominantly been cleaned. those bits of metal. And you see, while I've got this open, I may as well give this a bit of a brush out as well. This washer seems very bent out of shape. Let's see how we... This bearing spins quite freely. Let's test this out. I don't know. I'm not that convinced that just a bit of cleaning out of that gunk is going to do the trick, but that's all reassembled. All that rubbish is now gone. We'll have a look and see whether that's working. So I'm simply going to place this back in, remembering that the orientation of this was such that the label was on the top next to the tested button. You can see there, and that plug goes in on the left. So I'm going to put these 4 screws back in, and let's pop it back in the board and see if that happens. That will be a pretty simple fix. If not, I'm going to buy another one, replacement one, which I've sourced from RTPB in Australia, which I think there's, last time I checked, were around $70 Australian. So let's see if this doesn't work. We'll just replace it, because failing that, I think replacing the motor, which looks like it's had a fair amount of wear and tear, might be the only option. So let's try to see if we can get that working. So I've got the board, I've plugged in the stepper motor into plug P2. I re-plug it into, it goes back to the driver board, which is in P1, just for making it a bit obvious to see if this is spinning. I'm gonna pop the spider on there. And turn on the game. Well, we got some action there. And then it jammed up. Let's go into test. Let's test to see whether when the spider goes over the, when it turns and it breaks the opto, so we know that the opto is working fine. Okay, so that's working fine. Let's get back. Oops. See, it wants to turn and it's just jamming. So from that, my guess is electronically it's working just fine, but it's actually jamming. So let's take that slider out. Let's try again. You can feel the opto trying, the wheel, the motor trying to engage, but it really isn't. So I'm going to have another go at cleaning that out, otherwise I'm just going to replace it. Okay, so I have plugged in the plug that P1 that goes to the driver board. I've plugged in P2 which goes to the motor, the stepper motor, and I've actually just put the spider back on there just so we can see if it works. In the test menu I've gone to the spider test, which you can see on the DMD below, and we'll see how we go. So it looks like it's working, but let's just keep testing that. Okay, so you can see on the, it seems to be working out the position, and the motor, stepper motor, is turning. So I don't know what I've done in terms of cleaning out the gunk the second time, but that seems to be working just fine. Let's push enter to stop the wheel, and let's reassemble it and see if it works in the game. So now to get this back in, so you end up with all of your washers on the end, and then this is the tricky part. You want to try to hold, I find the bottom two easier, I found, and then if you can hold all of the screws in at once, and then just tighten these in, managing to keep all the washers in place. Okay, so that's tightened up in there. Now let's get our spider back on. Wanting to put this just as low as possible, that it's triggering the opto, but preferably not touching the print, otherwise you'll find it wears the print off. And let's see if that spins at all. That's not spinning now. Might help if I actually plug it in. That way it's got half a chance. There we go. The reason I knew that it wasn't working is it wasn't even triggering the opto. So I can turn this now, it triggers the opto. Let's go back and test the wheel as is. Look at that. Let's play a game and see if that that works in game now as well.
Are you ready to play? I don't want to know what's in there.
Stop the spider!
that's the spider spinning, problem fixed. Great thing, didn't have to get the soldering iron out, just a matter of cleaning out all the rubbish and gunk that was in the was stuck in the motor, in the gears of the motor. It was a pretty simple fix. This is the first time I fixed the motor. How hard was it? Not that hard. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you liked it, you can subscribe. You can hit the little bell for notifications. Cheers, thanks for watching.
Unpleasant dreams.